Hello, 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 and welcome to Bleav. That's Bleav in Lions, right here on the Bleav Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, at Cavanagh87, Jack Cavanagh, and we have ourselves a very special episode with a very special guest. Even if I do have to apologize for the Chicago Bears bias that he brings, but couldn't pass up the chance to talk to this electric individual, host of the Bleav in Bears podcast, host of the Bet on Chicago podcast. Please welcome at Joey Sports Guy, Joey Christopoulos.
Jack, this has been a long time coming. I'm so excited to be on the show. You're a great Twitter follow. I always enjoy your tweets and checking out your content. So anyone that's listening right now, you should definitely make sure that you give him a follow. And also, what better way, if you put our two football teams together, they combined for about 8 wins this year, we still probably wouldn't get us into the playoffs. So we're like that dive bar on a 2 p.m. Come on in for a beer. The beer is cheap. Let's have a great time. I'm excited to be here.
That's the thing. You forgot about the tie. We do add a tie in there as
yes.
well.
Percentage points. This counts.
Hey, it got the Steelers into the playoffs. That tie. It ended up ruining all of our lives, but we won't talk about that. Instead, we will commiserate about life in the NFC North. But first, we'll hear a word from our lovely sponsors at betonline.ag. BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. New year and a new updated desktop and mobile website. So sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Just use our promo code Bleav to get started. That's BLEAV. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Love it. Love it, Joey. Thanks for hopping in there. Should have got you to collab on the ad read, but
harmonize? Yeah, we could have harmonized.
We could have.
We love BetOnline here at the Bleav Podcast Network.
We do. And we'll be talking more about them later, but we've got to talk first about your Chicago Bears and what's going on there, because for the first time in what feels like years, the Lions have more of an organizational direction than the Chicago Bears.
Well, yeah. Okay. Yes, this is true. We are now. What's so funny about this is obviously you guys made this move last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
You completely changed the whole ship. Brought in Dan Campbell, started over, brought in Jared Goff. New era, new feeling. Let's see if we can build it up from there. That's what the Chicago Bears should have done last year after they lost to the New Orleans Saints in the playoff game. They came back, and I've said this so many times, but Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy came back for the encore that no one wanted. People were heading to the parking lot on the Matt Nagy era, and then they came out to play some more music. And now we're at this point where you're right, man. We're in the same position a little bit, very similar. For the Chicago Bears fans, this is something that's been going on for over 10 years, and this has happened ever since George McCaskey took over as chairman. If we all remember, Lovie Smith was the coach of the Bears with this great cover 2 defense. They fired the general manager, Jerry Angelo. What did they do? They brought in Phil Emery. They kept Lovie Smith, kept him for 1 year, won 10 games. Phil Emery then fired Lovie Smith. The next guy that comes in is Mark Trestman. Could have been Bruce Arians. Wasn't Bruce Arians, and necessarily because there was this whole thing of who's going to keep Jay Cutler. How are we going to keep Jay Cutler? We kept him, did the extension. Then when we fired Phil Emery, we fired Mark Trestman. What do we do then? We keep the quarterback. We hire Ryan Pace, and then we make him hire John Fox. That wasn't Ryan Pace's pick. So this whole time we've had this disjointed nature of how we go about our organizational structure from GM to coach to quarterback. Right now we're trying to get 2 out of 3. because we have Justin Fields as our quarterback right now. But again, is he necessarily the hand-picked guy of the next GM and coach that we're hiring? No, it's not true. I think Justin Fields is totally talented. But again, all of a sudden now, is this GM going to be 100% on board with our quarterback? It's a huge wait and see. There are tons of candidates. It's like, who needs American Idol when you have this GM coach switch right now at the Chicago Bears? It's a very exciting time, Jack.
It is. It is. And my co-host Jerry Ball, he talks all the time about how you can't be operating in silos as management. You can't have the coach over here doing one thing and the GM over here and the management over here. It needs to be one cohesive vision. So I wonder if the Bears can find that with this hiring process. George McCaskey leaves a lot of questions on the table because you've said, not worked out too well with him, but Mommy says it's going well.
Well, no, Mommy says that she's very, very disappointed. So when that happens, she's not upset. She's just very, very disappointed. And this just leads to deeper seated issues too, as well. For a Bears fan, we woke up and Pace and Nagy were out in the same morning. Finally, we're going to get some change here. Breath of fresh air. 4 hours go by. George McCaskey gets in front of the microphone, and then he starts saying some of the most bizarre stuff you're ever going to really hear at a press conference from a chairman or an owner of a football team, let alone any sports franchise. So we're kind of right back where we're at. And for Chicago Bears fans and for NFC North at large, where we're at looking forward, as a Bears fan, of course, as an optimist, I'm going to say this is always an opportunity to get it right. This next hire, this next GM, this is the opportunity to get it right for maybe the long term and have some stability. But again, there's the other door that you can open and say, here we go again as a Bears fan.
That's the problem you can run into because look at the Lions. Things were going well. Jim Caldwell, they were on the right path. They had stagnated. Don't get me wrong. It was the right decision to move on from Jim Caldwell, but then you replace him with Matt Patricia. Instead of elevating the team from the plateau of here to here, you plummet completely. And you start over after 3 years, and it's bare bones in this organization. It finally feels like the Lions are heading in the right direction. It finally feels like everyone is on the same page, but it took a long time, and we still don't even know. So credit to the Bears. They've decided to start over at the right time, and they are one step ahead of the Lions in the fact that I do believe they have their QB of the future if they can get someone to buy in on Justin Fields. So who do you think that is? Who do you want to see as the head coach of the Chicago Bears? Because Matt Eberflus, we know he's a second-round contender in the interviews. Ed Dodds has pulled out. What's Joey's wish list, and what's Joey's expectation?
Okay, which one do you want first? Let's do wish list first because that's more fun, right? Let's do wish list. So I've maintained, and I've said it on the pod for a while, and I've been saying this for about 6 or 7 months now, that if the Chicago Bears were serious about possibly contending for a Super Bowl with a rookie like Justin Fields on a rookie contract right now and developing him, the answer to this question is Sean Payton. Now I know what you're saying. He's in New Orleans. It's got it tailor-made down there. He can do whatever he wants. Well, here's my pitch to Sean Payton and everyone that would say that. First of all, let's look at the Chicago Bears situation. They do have a player like Justin Fields on a rookie contract. Sean Payton, who used to be in the Bears organization, can come here right away and obviously have carte blanche of whatever he wanted to do. He can handpick his GM if he wanted to. He can have his say in the draft if he wanted to. He can have his say on free agents if he wanted to. Now, if you go down to New Orleans right now, they've built a wonderful organizational structure down there. But I ask you, who is their quarterback? Is it Taysom Hill, who's about to have surgery on both of his feet? Is it bringing back Jameis Winston on a torn ACL? Is it on Trevor Siemian? Is it burning 3 first-round picks for a guy like Russell Wilson when their salary cap is already a problem to begin with? I don't see a scenario where the New Orleans Saints have a better chance at winning the Super Bowl in the next 5 to 8 years than, in theory, the Chicago Bears would if Sean Payton came in here and rejuvenated a fan base. Again, if he came out here, we would pay him buku dollars. We're talking more than Bill Belichick, $13-14 million a year. There are a lot of ties between Mickey Loomis and the Chicago Bears organization, back channel-wise, from Ernie Accorsi to Jerry Angelo, obviously to Ryan Pace, who got hired here 4 or 5 years ago. That is my dream pick. Will he do that? I'm not so sure. Will we ever hear about that rumor happening until it happens? I don't think so. So it's still up there to be debated. Now, my good co-host, Corey Wooten, former Bears defensive end, former Detroit Lions defensive end too as well, Corey Wooten, he likes Jim Harbaugh. Now, Jim Harbaugh, for him, he just feels like it's a culture changer. Now, he's not saying that it's going to solve all of your problems, but he says in the next 3, 4, 5 years, he can get us to where we need to be, which is an established franchise. And he just looks at what he did in San Francisco with a guy like Colin Kaepernick, not too dissimilar from the skill set of a Justin Fields, a guy like Frank Gore, not too dissimilar from a skill set of a David Montgomery, a Michael Crabtree, Darnell Mooney, Vernon Davis and Cole Kmet's a hard sell. Vernon Davis is pretty good, right? But again, he just looked at what happened in that offense, and he played against those Harbaugh teams in his playing career. And he said, that's the kind of football that we need, and the culture change, and maybe the power that needs to take over at House Hall, because clearly with George McCaskey, he wants someone to take control. He's not the one. I'm just a fan. I'm not a football evaluator, as he clearly obviously says. Now, those are the pie in the skies. Matt Eberflus, look, great respect among the Indianapolis Colts. We're obsessed with the Colts, whether it be Morocco Brown, because Chris Ballard used to be involved with our organization, or Matt Eberflus as well. I'll be honest with you, the name feels weird, Jack. Eberflus. Does that sound like a Super Bowl I don't know. I don't want to sound, shallow about it or make his name trivial, but Eberflus kind of hits a wrong chord with me. Brian Daboll's a big name out here. Obviously, he's a guy who's failed in other previous offensive coordinator positions, but now has a guy named Josh Allen, who we hope could maybe develop Justin Fields, not maybe into Josh Allen, but pretty damn close. You got Brian Flores out there. Brian Flores comes with a ton of baggage, and also a guy who's failed with many, many offensive coordinator hires. He's kind of a Lovey 2.0. Do we steal Nathaniel Hackett from the offensive coordinator position in Green Bay? I'm personally, just to wrap it up, is that I'm not really a hot assistant coordinator guy. You know what I mean? I'm not looking for the next hot assistant coordinator dude to come in here and remake it. I'm kind of looking for someone with some experience, someone that can kind of guide and take the ship and really kind of put his imprint on this Bears franchise. And I think we are thirsty as an organization for that type of control. And that's where I kind of see that fit right now.
I completely get that. The Bears, as you said, need a steady direction. We can't have any more of this Ryan Pace to John Fox to Matt Nagy. It was icky. It didn't work out for anybody. So there needs to be just stability, a structure in place. And I was hoping maybe Brian Daboll would come, just because that would be so fun to see him work with Justin Fields. It's kind of starting to feel like the Giants are interested in Bill's assistant GM, Joe Schoen, and Daboll would be the guy that accompanies him there. So that just creates more question marks than we have answers to. One question I have, though, what about Doug Peterson? Is that a little bit awkward because Matt Nagy took over for Peterson in Kansas City, replaced him? Is that something that Bears fans would completely revolt at?
I don't know about revolt at, but lukewarm is definitely a great way to categorize it. He definitely interviewed for the job. He was one of the first people to interview for the job with the Chicago Bears. He did take him to a Super Bowl, the Philadelphia Eagles. As we're learning now, him benching Carson Wentz for Jalen Hurts was the right move. I think we're all learning that right now. I will say that he came in, he spent time in our training camp last year. So he's been in our building already as a special assistant consultant with Matt Nagy. They're close buddies. They do bend each other's ear from time to time. I think that's what probably cooled us on going after Carson Wentz last offseason, was some people in our organization talked to Peterson and he said, no, threw up the red flag and said, do not.
Rightfully so.
Unfortunately, I do not think it would energize the fan base. I do feel it's a little bit of retread. And if you kind of dive deeper into the numbers, Doug Peterson's offenses weren't really that amazing. And look, I'm not saying he's a bad head coach. I wish him success if he does land a job somewhere else. I just don't think he'd be a right fit for the Chicago Bears at this particular time.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's not bad to have a retread, someone who knows what they're doing, but it feels as though it'd be more of the same with Matt Nagy, and no one wants that after watching this offense for the past couple years. And that kind of brings the next question is, whoever is the head coach, what happens on offense? Because you've got some free agents here. Allen Robinson, he's probably gone too. Yeah. Also, the reserve receivers, Jakeem Grant, Damiere Byrd, Marquise Goodwin, they're all free agents. You only have Mooney and Daz Newsome. But then the offensive line's all free agents too. James Daniel, he's a free agent. Center Sam Mustipher, he's an exclusive rights free agent, so he's probably back. Your right tackle, Jermaine Ifedi, and your left tackle, Jason Peters, all free agents. So I understand maybe bookends with the sophomores and Tevin Jenkins and Larry Borum, re-sign James Daniels and Mustipher and run it all back with Cody Whitehair there too. But is that what you want to see? What's the bigger need here, receiver or offensive line?
We're a lump of clay, molded as you will. That's what makes us so intriguing and enticing to all these names, Jack. That's what I'm trying to sell you right now. No, look, man, you're bringing up a great point. The offensive line was, it was such an interesting narrative last year. We came into the training camp saying we're going to have the worst offensive line that you've ever seen in your life. And look, they actually played decent, right? They played, reasonable. And I don't think that that's something that you should really want to aspire to, but a credit to them for actually coming together and not being a total, complete disaster by the end of the season. Jason Peters is 40 years old. I don't see him coming back. Jermaine Ifedi was an experiment that we went on the cheap with that hasn't really worked out. I don't see him coming back either. James Daniels is going to be an interesting case of if they do bring him back, I'm not going to be upset. And if they let him walk, I, in turn, will not also be upset either. It's really going to be about, in my opinion, trying to figure out what we're going to do at left tackle. Now, Tevin Jenkins and Larry Borum, a lot of rumors going on in Chicago right now is that we need to move Tevin Jenkins back to right tackle, which is what he played predominantly at in college. And maybe Larry Borum is your right guard. And all of a sudden, you've got a big right side of the offensive line, and you go out and you actually spend the money on someone that could play left tackle for you on a week-to-week basis, a professional that says, I know this guy can do the job.
Not someone like Charles Leno?
Seriously, though. No, I mean, honestly, and that was the thing was, moving on from him, which was so funny because actually, he's a pace guy. He was drafted by that regime, and now all of a sudden they let him go. In terms of the wide receiver, I think it's going to be a little patchwork for a while. And what I would like to see is obviously you're going to bring back Darnell Mooney. I think Jakeem Grant's going to have a home here in Chicago. I would like to see them try and bring him back because I don't think he's going to cost a lot of money. In terms of going after Devontae Adams, I think you know better than anyone else. I can see him being franchised this year, right? Which kind of brings us over to guys like Christian Kirk, right? Guys that might cost $7 or $8 million a year. I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind that really at all. Obviously Chris Godwin and Michael Gallup, torn ACLs, those are going to be gambles. But also there's a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster out there who might come back to Pittsburgh. You can also get him on the cheap. Emmanuel Sanders. And then what everyone's saying right now is our second round pick, which is currently 39th overall. We're looking at wide receivers. That's probably where that goes. Either that or cornerback, one of the two. George Pickens, character issues. Man, the ceiling is very high. What do you do with that? With a new GM coming in, does he make his mark, possibly rolling the dice on that there? So they're going to have to kind of piece that together a little bit. We talk a lot about on the podcast, does a team really need a number one wide receiver, or do you need depth and complementary pieces to go around Justin Fields? I'm kind of more on the complementary pieces right now. I don't need a wide receiver on the sidelines losing his mind because he's not getting the ball enough. So, going after a big guy like that, I might not be involved with. Another guy to keep an eye on, too, and this is a guy to keep an eye on for the Lions, too, as well. What happens to Calvin Ridley this offseason?
Yep.
Right? I mean, I can't see him staying in Atlanta. He still has a lot of value. What he'll cost, probably we can debate that. Third round, maybe compensatory or moves up incentive-wise, gets up to a 2 or something like that. But he's a guy that could be rejuvenated in a new city, and he could maybe have a home like in Detroit or like in Chicago, and he could thrive and come back as long as obviously we're provided that his mental health is on board. So a lot of questions. I don't think it's an overnight snap of the fingers, but there are ways to, maybe solve some of these issues that we have, especially on offense.
Definitely. And I kind of like that idea of Calvin Ridley maybe finding a home in the NFC North. With the Lions, we have all of these former player coaches, and Antoine Randall L., him working with Calvin Ridley, they would be a beautiful pair. Hopefully work well together on the mental side as well and be able to just get the world back on track for Calvin Ridley because we are rooting for him.
Well, do you mind if I bounce it back to you real quick? Because the Lions are in the same boat, my friend. I mean, I'm on Ron St. Brown. I get an opportunity. I write for a fantasy football website and I actually cover the Detroit Lions, which is fun for me. And ever since training camp, you've been reading the articles about what a great route runner St. Brown was. And he's, he's going to burst onto the scene. Well, it took a little while until that final 5 weeks of the season. Outside of him, though, what did the Lions do? How did they target their wide receiver room? Because, look, Tyrell Williams didn't work out. Rashard Perriman didn't work out. Khalif Raymond, nice player, but, man, what is he, a wide receiver 4?
Yeah.
Let's be real here. What did they do in the offseason?
So I have a vision for this Lions offense, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, absolutely love him. Even before the breakout, I was calling him as the next Cooper Kupp for Jared Goff. And then obviously that looks a little bit bad now after the season that Cooper Kupp had, but it's still valid in terms of early career and what they do in the slot. So I think that is your wide receiver 1. And as you said, I don't think you need a wide receiver 1, the Alpha X or anything like that, but why not Amon-Ra St. Brown as your wide receiver 1? You re-sign Josh Reynolds to be that stretch Z, that deep threat.
Yeah.
Khalif Raymond, you can probably re-sign on the cheap to be your punt returner, wide receiver 4. If they move on, oh well. And then maybe a Calvin Ridley you trade for, or I would love it, USC reconnection with, not Juju, although USC as well, Drake London, the big outside wide receiver, someone like him, Treylon Burks, or Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
That is my wish list for the Detroit Lions in the passing game.
And if I can real quick, you're not saying I'm sorry. So what's your pick right now? Are you guys pick 4?
We are pick number 2 overall. I don't want to pick a wide receiver with the first pick.
Well, wherever those Rams line in, that's where you're going to be targeting maybe that Garrett Wilson, maybe that Drake London. And also that could be, would you trade that Rams first rounder for a guy like Calvin Ridley, or is that too rich for your blood?
Well, the thing with the Lions is they can afford it because they do have 4 first-round picks in the next 2 drafts.
Yeah.
So I'd be okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
We would have to have the contract worked out before the trade went through because you can't risk the Jalen Ramsey situation, the Laramie Tunsil situation, the Jamal Adams situation where they have you over a barrel. You've traded a first-round pick. You have to pay them whatever they want. Do that first. And then, I'm all for it. You can draft a wide receiver with that Rams pick, maybe even with the second pick of the second round. You have that option too. The Lions have options. They have money, and I'm excited for it because when you look at the rest of the offense, all 5 offensive linemen starters can return. You can run it back with Decker, Jonah Jackson, Frank Ragnow, Hal Vaitai, and Penei Sewell. And then you have depth as well. Really, what the Lions need is that X receiver on the outside, a blocking tight end, a veteran, because Hawkinson's not that. He's a big wide receiver. I love him, but he's not great at blocking. And then you also need not a starting quarterback, but a QB to push Jared Goff, because I like what I've seen from Jared Goff in Detroit. Great person. He can look beautiful at times, but at other times he completely melts down. And you can't afford to have Tim Boyle as your backup plan anymore. It's not feasible anymore. So maybe it's a Marcus Mariota, maybe it's a Jameis Winston, or maybe you draft a quarterback late in the first, second, third, Bailey Zappi and Malik Willis and from North Carolina, Sam Howell. Lions are working with all of them at the Senior Bowl right now, or coming up soon shortly. Those are all options. So those are the 3 needs for the Lions on offense. X wide receiver, probably young, veteran blocking tight end, and backup quarterback.
I'm with you. I'm not a Jared Goff guy. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
And look, it kind of, a little bit of it is what it is, right? I think what you guys are going to, hopefully the fruit that's going to bear out of that are those first round picks. And that's what's got to be exciting as a Lions fan, right? Is that you actually haven't really gotten to see what the effect of that Stafford trade is going to do for your organization yet, because those picks are still on the way. Yeah, in terms of pushing Jared Goff, if I were you guys, I know you're probably tied up in some money, but like a Tyrod Taylor, someone who's an actual professional, what's Ryan Fitzpatrick doing? Who knows? Give him a call, see what happens. Because I think you guys would be interested in, I don't know if you're going to be playoff bound next year, but I would highly recommend you guys are going to want to be in some more games next year and win some more games. The first 6 weeks of the season, my God, you guys were losing in the most heartbreaking fashion. I mean, whatever you can cook up.
Devastating.
Yeah, the heartbreaking cookbook right here. Let's look up the recipe of how to devastate our fan base on a week-to-week basis. So yeah, if you guys can get in a position where you are, maybe in that 5 to 7 win range next year, and then walk out of it, and then maybe really start to think then of taking that swing at that quarterback and trying to maybe piece that together. And then by that third year, Dan Campbell, you can really start piecing yourself together and really tangibly sort of see it and really maybe start thinking about postseason.
Yes. And the only reason I want to maybe draft a quarterback this year is because I'm worried if Goff looks good enough that they re-sign him and invest in him. And I don't want that.
Do that. Yeah.
No. You're tied to him for one more year. I've accepted that. I'm okay with that because there's always the future. But the worst thing you can do, and I've talked to Lofa Tatupu, was a fan of him from Bleav in Seahawks. Mike Wall from the Bleav in Packers podcast, he called Jared Goff a coach killer. He's the kind of guy that gets 3 coaches fired. And Sean McVay moved on before that happened, but it happened with Jeff Fisher. Hopefully it doesn't happen with Dan Campbell. We need to have a plan for life after Jared Goff, especially in this NFC North.
Yeah, just living out here in Los Angeles, man, I'll just tell you from my perspective and when I talk to Rams fans and when I watch the games, my whole problem with Jared Goff is, and you can look it up in the numbers too as well, let's just take him back to the Sean McVay offense. Everything starts off really hunky-dory. We're going to try a lot of things. He's got this arm. We can make it happen. You look at his yards per attempt and yards per completion early in the season, usually in the 7.5, low 8s. You're like, okay, cool. Puts up a couple of good games here and there. But again, tiny hands, the fumbling, the turnovers, the mistakes. As the year goes on, you start to see that yards per attempt go down. And what that says to me is that slowly there's an erosion of trust with what you can get away with Jared Goff. And for me personally, that's inverse progress. You want to gain more trust in the offense as the season goes on. And that just seems to kind of be the MO with Jared Goff. Is he a good guy? Absolutely. I just don't think he's a winning quarterback. And, I've been on other Lions podcasts too as well. And this isn't like an anti-Lions thing. I think you guys just deserve better. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
I really think you guys just deserve better than Jared Goff. And I just don't think that he is that type of answer for you guys. So yeah, if you can find someone, a veteran that can push him a little bit, especially if, he bangs his thumb on some helmet and has to miss a couple of weeks here and there, you can bring someone in that isn't named, David Bleav or Tim Boyle and maybe give you guys a real chance and maybe galvanize you guys where maybe Goff does end up sitting on the bench the rest of the year because you guys are winning games with somebody else.
Exactly. That's all I'm looking for is another option, a path to the future, because Jared Goff is the perfect quarterback for when everything's perfect, when the receivers are open, when the offensive line has great protection. Perfect quarterback. But as soon as a little bit of pressure comes his way, he gets the hose happy feet. He overthrows, checks it down, throws those interceptions. And when you're facing the monsters of the Midway twice a year, that can't happen.
Yeah.
Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn are going to get pressure. And that's kind of what I'm wondering for the Chicago Bears this coming season is the defense going to be back? Because they still have that strong core of Khalil Mack healthy, Robert Quinn, Roquan Smith. I know you talked about Jim Harbaugh. What about the linebackers that Jim Harbaugh's had? Roquan Smith can follow in that long line of successful. Maybe bring back Vic Fangio. I don't know. Is this the year the defense becomes elite again?
So this is a great question. In terms of Harbaugh too as well, what I like about Harbaugh too as well is he's been able to identify talent at coordinator, which I think is a very underrated skill because he had Greg Roman and Vic Fangio when he was in San Francisco. And look what they've gone on to do. Successful careers with the Ravens and then Bears and then head coach of the Broncos.
He had Pep Hamilton at Stanford as well.
Yes. And I think that's an underrated quality, be able to surround yourself with a strong staff, which I think is the reason why Dan Quinn is getting such publicity right now. He can put together a really great staff. We'll see what happens. In regard to the defense, our front seven is going to be great again next year. And I think that is obviously an integral part to get you started whenever you want to talk about defense. It's going to be interesting to see what we do with our secondary. We got Jalen Johnson on one side, and then the other side, was picked apart consistently last year, whether it was Kendall Vildor or someone else. So I hope that they do go out and they draft somebody. In terms of safety right now, I do like Tayshaun Gibson. He's been on one-year deals with us the last couple of years. We'll see what happens. kind of stuck with Eddie Jackson's money. But again, we need more depth there. We need a nickel. We need someone that can actually come in and maybe provide a little bit more depth in those situations. I've been maintaining for a while that I think one of the undercurrents of the Chicago Bears is we're talking a lot about the offense right now. We're going to spend a lot of time investing all of our dollars in the offense, but this defense is going to be going through a state of transition in the next couple of years. And I hope Bears fans are ready for that and we can prepare for it. And that's going to be a big job with this general manager moving forward. Because let's be real, Khalil Mack finally got the foot surgery that he probably should have had 2 years ago, that he played through it. Everyone wants to give Khalil Mack a hard time. Dude's been playing hurt the last 2 years. Finally went under a knife, got that foot surgery. You got Robert Quinn for another year. Roquan Smith in his prime. But again, we might be saying goodbye to Akeem Hicks. So in terms of that front seven, it's going to be great next year. But over the next couple of years, we're going to have to turn that over. We're going to have to replace a Khalil Mack. We're going to have to replace a Robert Quinn. We're definitely going to have to replace a guy like Akeem Hicks. So next year, I'm right there with you. I think that could continue to be the backbone of our team. But moving forward, I mean, we're going to be seeing some changes. We're going to be seeing changes a lot in the NFC North, I feel like, in the next couple of years. And, hopefully the Lions and the Bears are two types of teams that are going to be the ones that are going to be ascending while these musical chairs kind of goes around.
That's really what I'm hoping for. And also shout out to Akeem Hicks, because the Canadian connection with me, played his ball at the University of Regina in Saskatchewan. Love our Canadian NFL players. And I agree. I hope that the Bears and the Lions are able to profit off of all this chaos, because the Vikings are also completely up in the air with their status. New GM will be hired before they hire a new head coach. Kind of the opposite of what the Bears are doing almost. What's going to happen there? Because I think Kirk Cousins is probably gone. It might be a hard rebuild in Minnesota. And that's why I think the Chicago Bears job is so much more attractive than the Vikings, because you at least have a vision with Justin Fields.
Yeah, you have a vision, you got something to build on. And in terms of Kirk Cousins, look, like, I don't know if you're with me on this. If he comes back and plays for the Vikings next year, I'm fine with it.
Right? Yeah.
And here's the thing is I try and keep things as simple as I can. And I feel this way with Jared Goff. It's just Jared Goff and Kirk Cousins don't scare me. When I go up against them, I look at other aspects of the game, of weaknesses and strengths. I'm not always worried about, is the quarterback going to beat me in those types of moments? And that's where the Minnesota Vikings are in the rock and the hard place with Kirk Cousins right now. If they move on from him, man, is it Kellen Mond? Holy cow. I don't know. They would have to go out and they'd have to get a stopgap or something along those lines. Justin Jefferson's a great player. I'm really curious with them what they would do with Dalvin Cook, who's still sort of kind of in his prime a little bit. But I'm with you, man. I think that they kind of do need to sort of tear it down a little bit. That defense of 3 or 4 years ago isn't the same as it was then. They got cash strapped a little bit, and they had to move on from a couple of guys. And some of the guys that they did keep around weren't exactly able to stay in the prime that they wanted to. And for them, I would probably look at a situation of maybe taking a year off, maybe trying to get into the top 3. When was the last time the Minnesota Vikings were in the top 3 of the draft, right? That actually can have a shot at a quarterback that can really, really energize and get them excited about the future. I mean, what was it? Christian Ponder at pick 11? You know what I'm saying?
And that was an overpick too. We all know that.
A long, long, long time ago. So I'm right there with you. And as much as both of us would like to think that Aaron Rodgers is heading out on his way of the NFC North, I think we're going to have to stick around. We're just going to have to take our lumps for another year or two on that front. But again, I think the Vikings could be heading towards a situation where they're sailing to the bottom. While our two franchises figure it out, we can maybe take advantage of that a little bit, pick up 2 wins a year from the Vikings for at least a year or two, and maybe see if that can also help us out with maybe some postseason hopes in the coming years.
That's what I'm – and again, as a Lions fan commentator, I'm not hoping for this. But as a fan of good football, I am hoping that the Chicago Bears – or sorry, not the Chicago Bears – that the Vikings do the full blow-up, because they've tried to keep it together for way too long, as you've said. They've made the playoff, or have 2 playoff wins since Brett Favre retired. It just hasn't worked. They're good enough to compete, but not good enough to win, and they're not good enough to fully bottom out. So intentionally do it. Get rid of Kirk Cousins. Yeah. Maybe trade Dalvin Cook for what you can get out of him. Just keep the young core talent like Justin Jefferson, Christian Darrisaw, and start over, because what you were doing didn't work at all.
Yeah, and even with Kirk Cousins, I mean, God, I saw this coming personally in training camp. And look, I don't want to make this into anything more than let's just keep it factual, right? Like Kirk Cousins said he wasn't going to be vaccinated, and his head coach publicly called him out for it. And they had this whole back and forth throughout training camp. And look, you can believe in whatever you want, call it momentum, call it juju, whatever it is. Their season started with the stink on it that they weren't able to get around, right? And now you have to ask yourself the question, can you just open up a window and just clear out that air by getting rid of the coach and the GM and keeping the quarterback? I think you got to get rid of all three, and that's why I think they got to move on from Kirk Cousins too as well this offseason.
Funny that you say that. Early in the preseason, when I was still co-hosting the show with Derek Okery, he asked me to predict the season whole way, and I thought that the Lions would lose that first game to the Vikings. And I didn't think that their second game against the Vikings would be their first win of the season. But I did predict that there would be some friction that the Lions could take advantage of, and they did.
Yep.
And ultimately, Zimmer is gone, but maybe it's time for just a complete rebuild in Minnesota. Start from scratch, because you can't compete with the Green Bay Packers. You probably can't compete with the Lions and Chicago Bears, so just start over. And I wish the Packers would start over too, but they probably won't.
Yeah, well, one can only hope. Christmas was over a month ago, Jack, so we can only do so much at this time. But yeah, I'm with you, and I think about this as a Chicago Bears fan sometimes too as well, of, how long do you want to kind of drift in mediocrity? And sometimes when you rip the Band-Aid off and you go all the way to the bottom, sometimes you can get back up to the top a little bit quicker if you're just decisive about it. Not 1 foot in and 1 foot out, because sometimes then you can kind of, be in that 6-11 territory that the Chicago Bears find themselves in. If we had ripped the Band-Aid off last year, went into it with a new GM and a new coach, either with that 20th pick, whether we moved up for Justin Fields or not, at the very least, we're on some sort of course right now. We'd be 1 year ahead of where we are, as opposed to right now probably starting over again with, thankfully, Justin Fields, but a whole new regime, new play calling, all that good stuff.
And just look at the difference that elite quarterback play can make for a team. I mean, you look at the Cincinnati Bengals 2 years ago, they were the worst team in football, even with Andy Dalton for a lot of the season.
Yeah.
Now they're one of the best teams in the AFC in the Super Bowl hunt. That's what elite quarterback play can do. That's what an Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson can do. So I know everyone wants to see Aaron Rodgers gone from our perspective, but we watched Jordan Love this season.
Yeah, dude.
I can't see you, as you said earlier, Devontae Adams, franchise tag. Aaron Rodgers, he's still under contract for another year. Why not one last run at it? Why not just make Aaron happy if you're the Green Bay Packers?
The only spot that, it's probably a little premature to start talking about where Aaron Rodgers is going to go. I don't get the Denver Broncos thing at all. Why would you go play in the same division as Patrick Mahomes? That makes zero sense to me. The only one that still kind of I would not shut the door on is if Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers got together and they said, hey, we're going to move on from you. He gets traded to the 49ers for Trey Lance and a bunch of other stuff, and then they move on with Jimmy Garoppolo, and then he actually goes to San Francisco. Because that's a ready-made thing, right? Or if he goes to Pittsburgh or something like that. But in terms of him going to Denver, I don't see that for any second of any imagination. If he went to the Raiders or the Saints, I don't see how that's a win now thing. I hate to say it, but the situation of him staying in Green Bay is better than any other thing that I see out there personally for him. And man, when you talk about elite quarterback play, just look at what Joe Burrow did against the Raiders last week. And it wasn't the touchdown passes or, the play with the invert and whistle or whatever. This is when they had a 3rd and 7, he picked it up, right? He found CJ Uzomah and he picked up that first down. After maybe the Raiders come back and get a score, he came back and scored again, right? That's what elite quarterback play does. That's what Bears fans are starving for, is a guy that in-game just settles everything a little bit, and a guy that you can count on. If you get down or if you give up a touchdown, he's going to go back and he's going to get points on the board. That's one of the best qualities about Tom Brady, where Tom Brady just goes, you know what? I'm going to go get 3 points on this drive. I'm just doing it. It's just happening. And then he goes out and he does it. Like, those stabilizers, I think, really are part of some of the more underrated qualities of elite quarterback play. And that's what I think both our teams are looking for, man.
We truly are. And Unfortunate for the Lions that this is the year they get the second overall pick instead of
Yeah.
next year when there is Bryce Young from Alabama, when there's CJ Stroud from Ohio State, because I don't think there's a QB worth taking at 2. I
Nope.
think it's going to be either Thibodeau or Aiden Hutchinson. But look at the Cleveland Browns. They built a pretty good roster that way by punting quarterback for a couple years. So
You can have their quarterback now. You can have
yeah.
Jack. No.
Yeah, I think I'll pass on that one. Thank you for the offer. Do you want him?
No. No, I would take Mitch back. I would tell you to bring in Trubisky in before you bring in Baker Mayfield.
I've thought about that, and that's one of the veteran quarterbacks. Veteran, I say, but I'd be okay with, because it's not a Colt McCoy, a Case Keenum, where you're just overpaying for nothing.
Yeah.
That would at least there's still some upside left in Mitchell Trubisky, but I'm hearing some rumors he's going to follow Brian Dable to the Giants and compete with Daniel Jones, which would be the most hilarious QB competition of the offseason. I sincerely hope it's true.
Trubby in New York. I don't see it, Jack. I'm sorry.
Well, he's technically in New York right now.
Yeah.
Western New York.
Yeah, but I think in a big market, I don't know if big market is where MT10 is going to thrive. Let's just leave it at that.
That is a good point. But when we talk about thriving, who's going to thrive throughout the playoffs that we've got? Divisional round coming up this weekend. Bet Online has all of these beautiful spreads that you can bet on. You can take the over under, plenty of prop bets as well. So I got to know your picks. So let's take it game by game. Titans host the Cincinnati Bengals, favored by 3.5. Who you got, Joey?
So this is now when I was talking last week about Raiders and Bengals, the part that I found it to be intriguing, just in terms of points being scored, a lot of people were taking the under on points being scored, which I actually think ended up coming true. But I kind of like the Bengals in that matchup because both teams were sort of, new to the dance. And sometimes when you get a new team into the dance, they play someone that's been there before. Sometimes you can see those hiccups and you can see that stagnant offense. But neither of them, they were fresh as daisies, so they were able to play their game, and that's where Joe Burrow was able to have success. I got to be honest with you, man. I'm sticking with the Titans on this one. I really am. Now, I love Joe Burrow. I think he's a great quarterback. What's going to be really intriguing about this matchup is you got two teams right now that were both in the top 7 and stopping the run. And look, Derrick Henry, we're taping this, on a Wednesday right now. We don't know for sure if he's coming back, but I'm assuming that he plays in this game. If Derrick Henry plays in this game, I'm sticking with the Titans on this one. They've been really good at stopping third downs this year. They're good at stopping the run. If they can take away Joe Mixon a little bit and turn it into a Joe Burrow fest one way or the other, I do think that the Titans are that type of team that's been there before, that can trip up a new young face like the Bengals just enough to possibly come out and have a victory in Tennessee. I don't love the pick, but I am sticking with the Titans because I know a majority of everyone's going with the Bengals. What say you?
I am one of the majority going with the Cincinnati Bengals.
Tell me, pitch me.
It feels, I'm going to talk about this pretty much with every game, but there's just an atmosphere around certain teams right now. There's just a buzz, and I don't know what it is, a certain mojo. And Joe Burrow talked about how no one got COVID on the team because there's not a lot to do in Cincinnati. They just hung out with each other, and it's kind of like a brotherhood. It just feels like something special is building in Cincinnati. The one worry I have, though, they didn't keep their foot on the gas against the Raiders, almost let them come back and tie up the game. Again, this is their first dance in the playoffs, but that can't happen against the Titans because they will come back. The Titans don't care if they're down 21 points. They're still going to stick to their game plan and creep with Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill back into the game. So that's my worry, but I'm taking the Bengals to win. Definitely taking them to cover 3.5 points. Packers hosting the 49ers, favored by 6 points. Aaron Rodgers, our rival, versus the team that now we're hoping that he plays for next year, as you said.
Yes, please.
What say you?
I got to stick with the Packers on this one. And you mentioned him, Aaron Rodgers. This is kind of where it starts and it ends for me. I think this is going to be a great game. And, I think we're very fortunate to have the 49ers in the playoffs because they gave us a great game last week against the Cowboys. I think they're going to do it again this week. I keep harping on it over and over again. Jimmy G and turnovers. They went up against that Cowboys team with 22 interceptions this year, and they were able to get one in a crucial moment to turn the game over on its head. That just still terrifies me. And look, I do think the Green Bay Packers are going to be able to scheme up a way to at least get to Jimmy G once and sack him once, something the Cowboys were unable to do last week. And when it comes down to it, no matter what's happening in this game, Deebo Samuel can run roughshod over everybody. The ball's in Aaron Rodgers' hands in crucial moments in the fourth quarter. I'm taking him all day long, especially at Lambeau Field. I do think that they squeak out a victory here. I'm sorry, what is the line? Is it 5.5 right now, Packers?
It was 6 earlier when I looked it up.
I think the 49ers, you can make a strong case that they're going to cover there. I think that's a great cover play for sure. I would also maybe look at what the over-under is in terms of points. If it's anything under 48.5, you can maybe talk myself into that on the under on that one. But I do think the Packers are going to be able to win.
We're in lockstep. I think this is going to be a lower scoring game than people expect. Something along the lines of 20-24. Packers win by 4. So I agree. Packers win because of Aaron Rodgers. The 49ers are competing not because of Jimmy G. They're competing in spite of him. So I think they can compete with the Packers. Ultimately, they'll fall short by 4 points. So take the 49ers on the spread, take the Packers on the money line because Aaron Rodgers is just unfortunately too good.
He's too good. And my final point on it too, as well as, 49ers were so successful in moving Deebo around and doing a little end arounds and bringing him out of the backfield. In terms of stopping end arounds, that's something that you can do pretty easily as a football team. And I think the Packers can snuff that out, which makes Jimmy G have to move the ball vertically down the field a little bit more. It gives them a shot. And Jack, I'm really curious to see, are they going for it on every fourth down, the Packers, in this game after last year? What number of fourth down did they not go for it? Is it 4th and 10 at their own 20? Is it the only time they don't go for it on fourth down? Because I think Rodgers is going to want to go for it every time.
I don't think Matt LaFleur is even going to have a chance to make those decisions. I think as soon as it's fourth down, he's going to
look. I can't hear you. I'm just going to play. I can't hear you.
Yeah, he's going to look at his play sheet, look up at Aaron. Aaron's just going to be that, just wave him off, and then he's already called his own play that he's running.
What? Okay.
It's too bad they're not playing in New England. There's those rumors that the headsets cut out all the time in New England. Yeah, they're going to be aggressive. And I think because of that, the 49ers are not going to be able to pull out the victory, even if they hang in close. Now, I've got to know, Matthew Stafford, you've seen him for years in the NFC North. First year in the NFC West, heads to Tampa Bay to take on the GOAT as 3-point underdogs. What say you about playoff Matt Stafford?
Well, credit where credit's due last week. I thought he came up with a couple of fantastic throws. There was a downfield 40-yard bomb to Van Jefferson that was a fantastic throw. He was able to connect with Odell Beckham, and of course, he still has Cooper Kupp. And Sonny Michel was able to give him, I think, just a little bit enough there to get him ahead. I think, we're going to talk a lot about the quarterbacks for sure, Stafford versus Brady, on and on. This is a pass rush game for me, and it's going to be who gets home, right? I think in both cases, whoever gets home is probably going to win this game because if you give Matt Stafford a hard time, look, I'm not saying anything groundbreaking. I think he's probably going to falter. They don't have the running game to probably counterbalance that, and I think the Buccaneers are in a great position. In terms of the other side, the only way to stop Tom Brady is to get to him, right? And now you have all of a sudden Aaron Donald, and you got Von Miller, and you got Leonard Floyd on that defensive line going after him. If they can get that happen, they're going to have a hard time. Jack, I went to this game earlier in the year at SoFi. I went to Rams Buccaneers.
I am so jealous.
Yeah, I had a family member call, and I was like, I had no horse in the race, but I was like, I got to see Tom Brady live. And look, like, the Rams won that game, but Tom Brady moved the ball down the field at will. They just couldn't get it done in the red zone and put points on the board. So now the question is, can Tom Brady do that? I see another close one in this one. I'm leaning Buccaneers. I really am. I thought the Rams played great last week, but again, they're on the road. It's a pass rush issue for me too as well. And when it comes down to it, I think Brady can do just enough. I see more field goals than people probably imagine in this one, or maybe would like to see. I'm feeling Buccaneers, man. What say you?
I have to go with Matthew Stafford in this one.
Yeah,
And part of the reason is the injuries to Bucks right tackle, the all-pro Tristan Wirfs,
Mm-hmm.
and their center Ryan Jensen. Now Jensen came back, but he's still banged up. Wirfs
Mm-hmm.
might be completely out. The
Mm-hmm.
backup right tackle Josh Wells, he's banged up too. I think the injuries on the offensive line of the Buccaneers is what makes the difference. That and Mike Evans being locked down by Jalen Ramsey, because no one else scares you at wide receiver. Obviously, Gronk's his own beast, but I think that the Rams are going to be able to pull this one out. And this has caused a lot of debate amongst Lions fans. Are you rooting for Stafford or are you rooting for the draft pick? Personally, I am rooting for Matt Stafford because if you look at draft history,
Good.
the perfect example, the Lions took Jared Davis, however, we like to forget about him,
Two
but
R's, 2 R's. It's all good. Yeah.
we like to forget because he was picked 20th overall. 10 picks later was TJ Watt.
Yeah.
I'd rather just root for Matthew Stafford. He deserves all of the success. So I'm a bit biased in this one, but I'm taking the Rams to cover and to win outright.
Yeah, as you should. I mean, yeah, what? The 24th pick and the 28th pick or whatever. I mean, guys, let's be real here. I mean, even in the draft index, I don't think you're losing a whole lot of points on that front. So, and I'm with you, man. I think you guys should. I mean, as Lions fans, I think Matt Stafford, I just go back to even with Megatron. He gave you some actually some really good memories. And you mentioned Jim Caldwell at the top of the pod. And I mean, that's probably the best looking Lions team since Scott Mitchell. And, honestly, like what? And
Well, now after the Bengals,
and
the Bengals won that playoff game, now the Lions are on the longest streak without a playoff victory.
oof.
91 with Barry Sanders, with Jerry Ball, and that entire crew.
Wow. I mean, well, we only have two playoff wins this century. So I mean, we're not that far away. Don't worry about it. But no, I hope you guys are rooting for Matt Stafford. I mean, he did right by you guys. He put up some numbers. It wasn't always his fault. He threw some fourth quarter interceptions, but who doesn't? You know what I mean? I'd be rooting for him as well.
Absolutely. I think that he deserves it. He deserves all of our goodwill. So that's my stand. That's the hill I'm going to die on. Now, for the main event, and I think this truly deserves to be the main event, the final game of the weekend, Sunday evening football, Sunday night football, because it's 6 p.m. They're treating us East Coast people early. We'll get the early bedtime on Sunday. Kansas City, Buffalo. Casey's favored by 2 at home right now. That's dropped down already. They opened at 2.5 points,
Wow.
bet it down. I won't be surprised if this line keeps shifting towards the Bills. It's that close. And I think I'm going to have to take Buffalo because we talked about that feeling. Josh Allen and this Bills team they have that aura around them.
I'm right there with you. Now,
Woo!
this actually flies against, the reason why I pick in Buccaneers is, going against Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes often can be a fool's errand, right? But here's my thing with the Buffalo Bills is, and I try and look for this with every Super Bowl team, and it's the reason why teams like the 49ers a couple years ago, Baltimore Ravens a couple years before that, I just think the Buffalo Bills have the most balance of any other NFL team out there right now. If you look at it from a fantasy perspective, all season long, they were top 5 in fewest fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, and wide receivers. And that didn't change. It wasn't like they got on some sort of hot streak later on in the season. That was from week 3 and week 4 all the way through. They were a red light matchup all along the way. So I think that defense stands up. On top of that, all of a sudden you're seeing Devin Singletary, speaking of my fantasy team, Devin Singletary all of a sudden is playing football. Hooray. Fantastic. He's got it going now. Something that probably could have helped me 2 months ago. But I really like Dawson Knox. You forget the fact that Stephon Diggs is still one of the premier receivers in the game. And right, you got a guy like Josh Allen that can go drive for drive with a guy like Patrick Mahomes right now. I just think that they're possibly, not just because of last week and not because of, there have been some uneven performances. they just kind of have that vibe to me. Enough of that balance, enough of that. This is their time. Enough of that Josh Allen playing the way that he's playing right now. He didn't really have a down year when he threw one or two less touchdowns than he did the year before in his breakthrough season. I think they can take down the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't really trust Jerick McKinnon to be the bell cow in the backfield. I definitely don't trust it if it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire back there too as well. I think they can get to Patrick Mahomes and fluster him just enough. We've seen with the Kansas City Chiefs that they can't play 4 quarters. And even against the Steelers, they took that first quarter off a little bit to sort of sort things out, and then they got it going. That's great. I don't think you can do that against the Buffalo Bills. I think the Bills can straight up win this game. And I'll be honest with you, I think it might not be close. I mean, I'm not saying they beat them by 10 points or more, but I think the Chiefs could seriously be chasing in this game, and I like the Bills to win.
Exactly. And I mentioned it with the Bengals taking their foot off early against the Raiders. The Bills have never done that. The entire time that Sean McDermott's been a head coach, he's been getting the poor sportsman criticism. To that, I say, stop him. Stop him. And they can't. No one can stop Josh Allen when he's on fire. The only possible way I see the Bills sputtering out is if bad Josh Allen shows up like against the Jacksonville Jaguars in that blip this season. But the way they've been playing, the way this entire team just feels, the vibe that they have, I don't see it happening. I think that we're going to be looking at AFC Championship Joe Burrow versus Josh Allen.
And that's a really great point that you brought up the Bengals like this too. And I think we can't underestimate what the Bills just did to the Patriots last week. It goes beyond the 7 possessions and the 7 touchdowns, and it goes beyond the 45 points. They were the punching bag for the Patriots for how long? You know what I mean? Decades. And then all of Josh Allen's career and this iteration of this coaching staff and all the players that are on there. To slay the dragon like that gives you just the utmost confidence. And I'm going to start bending sports, but go back to, for us, when Jordan finally beat the Pistons in 1991. Go back to when the Chicago Cubs finally beat the St. Louis Cardinals in the 2015 playoffs. You know what I mean? That stuff means something to organizations, fan bases, but also to the players that are out there on the field, which makes them believe they could do anything. So they're not scared of the Kansas City Chiefs by any stretch of the imagination, because they just beat the team that maybe they were more scared of than Patrick Mahomes himself, right? And I think that can mean something. That can carry them in this game, and I think that's why they might have the edge and why they'll probably win the game.
And it's not just that victory. It's back-to-back wins against the Patriots. Remember, They lost the Win Bowl where Mac Jones threw 3 passes the entire game. But back-to-back wins against the Empire.
Yeah.
With Emperor Bill Belichick in the hood.
Points. Yeah, 78 points, right? Isn't that it? 78 points combined in those 2 games? Wow.
Yeah, so I think that we're going to be looking at Buffalo hosting Cincinnati, and I think we're going to be looking at Green Bay hosting the LA Rams. And then I don't know what happens after that. It feels as though it's 4 teams of destiny on a collision course.
Yeah, if it's, oh man, that would be so interesting. I mean, I would love, I think, Rodgers Brady is always a great matchup. I think that would be a lot of fun. Packers Rams.
Rodgers Stafford once again.
Yeah, Rodgers Stafford once again. That would be something, though. What an interesting NFC North storyline if that came to pass. And then it is Matthew Stafford is the one that prevents Aaron Rodgers from going to the Super Bowl. And, hopefully would maybe submarine Aaron Rodgers' hope and optimism to stay with the Green Bay Packers. And because of Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers asks for a trade to get out of the NFC North. I, as a Bears fan, would tip my hat to him. I would do the respect thing. You know what I mean?
Slow clap. You deserve the slow clap building to thunderous applause for that. I need to see it now. I absolutely need to see it. That's how we get out of all of this mess of the past couple of years. All will be right in the world when Matthew Stafford eliminates Aaron Rodgers from the playoffs.
I'm with it. Sign me up and get Trubisky a ring while we're at it. Get him a Super Bowl ring. Let's just.
Oh goodness. Well, maybe we're asking a little bit too much, but remember, all of those picks were brought to you by BetOnline.ag. And Joey, thank you so much for joining me here today. It's been an absolute blast getting to chat with you. I'm looking forward to our next conversation already.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. I think maybe next time we get you on my side of things, and maybe we'll do it in a couple weeks. Maybe the Bears will have a head coach, and maybe we can start talking about some free agency. We can look at both of our teams, do a contrast and compare. Obviously, as the days pass on, we'll get a little bit closer to talking about NFL draft stuff, which I always really, really enjoy. And keep in mind that second first round pick that you guys get, if it is in the 26, 27, 28 range, the Bears are going to be at 39. So we could be able to talk about some similar prospects too as well. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Jack. Love your content. Say hi to Jerry Ball for me. Everyone checking out this, you got to make sure that you follow Jack on Twitter. Follow me at Joey Sports Guy. And yeah, doing Bleav in Bears. A lot of great content coming up as we track who's going to be the next coach and next GM. And also make sure you check out Bet on Chicago too as well. That is a show that covers not just the Chicago Bears, but the White Sox, the Cubs, the Bulls, the Blackhawks, as well as Chicago pop culture, Midwest pop culture. And I'm doing a couple movies coming up too as well. Little entertainment stuff as well to check out. So something for everybody.
Well, and especially you mentioned the Chicago Bulls, DeMar DeRozan, another Canadian connection, former Toronto Raptor. So we love it. Make sure you check Joey out everywhere you can find him at Joey Sports Guy, and he's got the links there. And as always, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, we will see you next time.